Something's wrong. That beacon shouldn't be broadcasting. Sub-Commander Dravkor didn't blink as the cartel patrol frigate Ventharn dropped into low orbit over Goran 6. The world below, veined with glacial canyons and sheathed in sulfur-hardened frost, rotated slowly, untouched, undisturbed. Their orders were routine. Check in on Outpost 9A, re-establish relay contact, confirm asset containment. But there was no contact. No motion alerts, no perimeter disruptions. And now this. Kor's clawed digits hovered above the command surface, flicking through spectral analysis reports that returned nothing. No thermal readings from the facility, no electromagnetic chatter, just a single transmission pulsing at rigid intervals from the surface, short, encrypted, encrypted again. Translate it, he snapped. The bridge crew, 12 battle-hardened officers from 4 different species, fell silent. The interpreter node clicked once. Then a low monotone filled the chamber. Exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. Nothing more. Threat neutralized. Kor muttered, mandibles twitching in confusion. That's not cartel lexicon. That's military jargon. Earthborn. Bring us lower. The Ventharn dropped through Goran's upper haze, its composite hull resisting the icy particulate, tearing across the atmosphere like diamond shrapnel. The descent was slow, deliberate. Even veteran crews avoided Goran 6 unless the paycheck demanded it. Wind velocity climbed. Electrostatic sheeting sparked across the viewport. Still, the facility's outline emerged ahead, a structure once buried into a mountainside like a knife hilt in muscle. Now, it resembled a carcass. Ice spread through corridors where heat had once roared. Steel beams curled inward, not from explosion, but implosion. Every blast point bent the wrong way. No distress beacon, the helmsman whispered. No automated calls, nothing except that message. Kor stood, his footsteps echoing across the metal grating as he moved to the forward observation window. Smoke didn't rise. Fires were already dead. Snow reclaimed every structure like nature had buried the evidence itself. A munitions silo was caved in from above, not detonated from inside. It was evident issue. Cargo bays sat open, their security doors punched outward from calculated internal pressure drops. There were no bodies. Deploy a drone, Kor ordered. Atmospheric drone only. No manned landers yet. The small orb launched from the ship's underbelly, arcing across the breach in the upper hangar of the compound. Its internal displays fed back to the heads-up array in real time. Scorched trails, long, narrow, too clean, cut through corridors where energy weapons had discharged. But every angle was surgical. Not one residual heat trace was scattered. Whoever fired, aimed to neutralize, not destroy. Sir, the weapons analyst muttered, pointing at the screen. Look there, on the southern wall, a symbol, burned into the plating, not painted, branded, a single Earth tacticon, etched with thermal arc precision. Clean, brutal, unmistakable. The insignia of the United Earth Special Recon Division. Squad Veritas. Kor stepped back. I thought the Helion cartel employed species-enhanced operators on this contract. Apex forms from Sector Volcari. I saw the files, thermal-blooded, quadruple-lung shock units. Even one of them could clear a fire base in minutes. They weren't built for siege, they were built for slaughter. They were out-adapted, said the helmsman flatly. Kor spun. What? The helmsman, a cold-eyed Drevan male, didn't blink. Whatever hit them, didn't rely on heavier firepower, didn't use overwhelming force, didn't trigger alert systems. They shut down biomonitors, power grids, and neural inhibitors with zero EM surge. They ghosted them? Kor's tone tightened. The helmsman nodded. Not even ghosted. They rewrote the environment, made the defenders walk into their own death. On screen, the drone's path shifted. It panned over a fractured hallway where the floor had split, not explosively, but through a seismic bleed shift. One wall had been tuned to fracture frequency, using something likely harmonics, not charges. The structure failed in on itself, like a folded lung. A skitter of movement caught Kor's eye. The drone turned. A secondary hallway, unlit, held a shape, not moving, not hiding, just watching. A human, clad in black exo armor matte-coated, to absorb all visible spectrum. No insignia, no tag. Only a single slow hand raised, not in threat, but in signal. It was a live feed. The bridge went still, Impossible, whispered Core. This place was raided hours ago, maybe a full cycle. No warm readings, no motion until now. But the human was standing still, body calm, weapon holstered, waiting. Then the signal dropped. The feed blinked out. The drone ceased transmission. Hard, we've been counter-hacked, the helmsman said slowly. By who? Unknown. He pointed at the beacon again. Exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. Only this time, the second pulse contained a new layer of data, hidden under the original encryption. It wasn't a command structure. It was a final report. Squad Veritas's mission log. Theron Vesik's voice, deep, unhurried, played softly into the bridge speakers. Facility neutralization complete. No civilian signatures found. Cartel operators verified to be enhanced through illegal inhibitor-class genetic tech. Units nullified. Primary objective achieved. Evidence stored. Extraction in progress. A pause. And for the record, no casualties. The file ended. Core turned away from the display, his eyes heavy with something he hadn't felt since his cadet days under Argent 4's orbital siege. Dread. The kind that crawls under skin and nests in bone. Send this to Cartel Central. Full decrypt. Make sure the Confederation eyes see it too. And what of Veritas? The helmsman asked. Core's eyes drifted back to the ice-covered world, now quiet once again, as if the violence had never occurred. If they're still down there, he said quietly, we're not going to find them. Not unless they want us to. Behind them, the message blinked across the display again. Exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. Deployment window is 5 minutes. Strip the noise. Strip the flash. We're writing silence into architecture. Commander Theron Vesik didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words clipped through the ops chamber like blades, each one measured, irreversible. Around him, the members of Squad Veritas moved without affirmation, calibrated by habit. Ritual was for religion. This was execution. Above them, a cluster of laser plasma displays pulsed streams of data, atmospheric slice gradients from Goran 6, electromagnetic drift patterns, orbital tidal fractures. Each detail narrowed the margin of insertion to fractions of survival. None of the men blinked at the numbers. Admiral Sarek Darn appeared on the central feed, shoulders squared, lips flat as canyon edges. Operation Void Lance is in final phase. No signal latency expected. Command oversight ends here. Transmission blackout begins on mark. Received, Vesik said. No salute, no sentiment. He turned to his unit without pause. Strip identifiers. Deep seal all comms. External signatures stay buried beneath fracture noise. Everything else dies with this briefing. The team fanned out into their prep stations. No drama, no declarations. Auric Fenn rotated his spine braces, the internal servos whispering beneath the skin-tight kinetic harness. His back bore the marks of past entries, long orbital drags that left plasma streaks against drop plating. He muttered to himself while checking his gear, more force of habit than actual planning. What's your payload? Vesik asked without looking. Fenn lifted a composite coil gun and slid a vial of sub-zero fluid into its secondary chamber. Gravity percussion, not for killing, for folding doors. Male Trin, silent in the back, worked across a 3D engraved data slate, isolating cartel network latches and breathing patterns from old facility logs. Security nets on Goran 6 run delta cycles every 11 seconds, but they double ping on drop days. I'll mimic static from their mining drills to cover our signature. Should give us 9 seconds every cycle. Good, Vesik said. Don't miss by one. Trin didn't respond. He never did. Response wasn't his way. Answers lived in results. Ruvek Strawn crushed a mineral capsule with a compact field mortar, watching its granules vaporize into translucent fumes. He leaned over and sniffed once, testing exposure delay. Compound's reactive time under Goran's barometric pressure is 13 seconds. It'll drop musculature response by 60%. No kill vectors. They'll breathe, but they won't move. Vesik nodded. I want every mercenary in that compound breathing. I want them reporting what it's like to be outmaneuvered before they pass out. A mechanical click echoed. Dren Solvik reattached his impact claws and tested a vertical sprint rig with subtle jumps on the chamber's structural frame. His breath barely registered. Like always, he avoided eye contact, just studying weight resistance across his shoulders, like he was built for gravity and nothing else. From the darker edge of the room, Vorn Kethel activated his headset. A low looping thrum emerged, one only he could hear. He recorded cartel combat phrases phonetically, layering them with rhythmic Terran dialects. His words weren't meant to be spoken, they were meant to embed, whispered in the ears of enemies during infiltration, seeded into their neural pattern recognizers, dissolving their morale before the first strike landed. Language field is set, he said flatly. If they scream, they'll hear us first. Vesic finished arming his wrist stabilizers and rotated his shoulder twice. The exogear folded tight against his form, tuned for Goran's gravity well and deep cold skeletal contraction. He turned toward the hangar door. How long until the window closes? 71 seconds, came the automated voice, neutral, sterile. He stepped forward, the others following wordlessly. No countdowns, he said. No one here needs them. The deployment bay split open, revealing the array of magnetic slip pods, jet black cylinders, no larger than coffins, each customized for atmospheric cut-through under silicate dust storms. Each man entered his chamber. Inside his, Vesic gripped the handrails and closed his eyes, not in reflection, but calculation. Below them, Goran rotated beneath a cloud line of frozen pressure systems and shifting tectonic channels. The cartel facility sat atop an unstable ridge, one that hadn't moved in 100 years. But Earthborn soldiers knew something about places that never moved. They always did. Eventually, the clamps locked in place. Sonic barriers muted the sound of deployment. There was no final horn, no signal flare, no epic send-off. Just a quiet release as 6 pods vanished through the floor, like bullets from a silent chamber. Downward, through layers of volatile gases and ionized clouds, they dropped with no heat signature, camouflaged within Goran's seismic rhythms. Each pod pulsed a timed nullfield wave designed to mirror tectonic movement. Even if someone were watching, they'd think it was the planet exhaling. The view turned into frost, cold clawed at the pod walls. Inside, Vesic's heartbeat slowed, not from fear, from method. A whisper came over the internal channel, Kethel's voice, smooth as static. They'll expect explosions. We'll give them erosion. Then silence returned. Atmo breach. Entry phase complete. 6 pods impacted ice at different coordinates. No lights, no signal. They buried themselves beneath the frost crust and sank into silence. Inside the impact chamber, Vesic blinked open his HUD. Readouts flared. Bios, terrain, radiation, pulse checks. No misfires. All green. He took one breath, just one, and then the outer seal melted away, vaporizing on touch. He stepped out into Goran 6's night. No welcome, no patrols, only wind like razors against a world that had forgotten how to scream. Watch your souls, Goran doesn't forgive. Theron Vesic's voice came through the internal link like compressed static, his tone unhurried but sharp enough to cut through the thermal insulation fogging every soldier's visor. Dren Solvik was the first to breach the crust, his figure slithering from the pod's skeletal remains into air so dense it carried weight, not pressure weight, as if the atmosphere itself wanted everything to stay buried. They had landed scattered exactly as planned. The magnetic drop had masked their trajectory beneath Goran 6's tectonic drift. 6 separate impacts camouflaged beneath seismic anomalies recorded as natural events, except nothing on this world had moved in millennia. Solvik moved in complete silence, the snow crunching underfoot like splintered bone. His traversal claws gripped the frosted incline while his biogel undersuit adjusted muscle tension to counter the pull of 1.6 Earth gravities. He took his first breath through the filtration hood, and the cold slammed into his lungs, not a chill but a sting, like inhaling glass dust. Male Trin reported in next. Signal ghost in zone echo, he muttered, sliding across a ridge shaped like a frozen wave. His heads-up display painted false thermals of long-cooled reactors hidden beneath the surface, blinking in and out of visibility like ghosts caught between timelines. This facility's running phantom outputs. They loop telemetry on a 17-second lag. Feeds are showing cartel guards patrolling corridors they left 10 minutes ago. Copy, Vesic said. Make them doubt what's real. The commander emerged third, clawing free from frost-laced rock that peeled back like shattered mirrors. He checked the fracture lines beneath his boots and tapped his wristpad twice. The map of the facility bloomed in laser vectors, fluid, reactive, like a mind trying to remember a dream. We shift to phase blue, route convergence at sector threshold 27. Behind him, Ruvek Strawn's impact site had collapsed into a hollowed ravine. The chemist hoisted his breath regulator and scanned for fissures. His boots crunched into brittle ice sheets that cracked like dry skin. He knelt, dipped a sensor into the frost, then nodded once. Surface pH acidic, corrosion active, could break through subfloor by weight alone. You're not breaking anything, Vesic answered. You're listening. Fenn's signal pinged in next. His pod had ruptured through an old ventilation shaft, twisted at the edges like peeled armor. He exhaled once, more from habit than effort, and shouldered his gravity percussion rig. The weapon was heavy, but the recoil would flatten structures more than targets. Eastern Ridge cleared, marking thermal voids. They've got blind zones where the walls sweat and refreeze. Nothing holds shape. Vorn Kethel had yet to speak, but he didn't need to. A tone vibrated in each helmet, a dissonant hum tuned to neural unease, not fear, disorientation. Vorn's specialty wasn't silence, it was disconnection, making the enemy feel alien on their own world. The squad moved. Goran's terrain was unstable but logical. The crevasses ran in strands like old scars. The wind didn't howl, it whistled, irregular, as though caught between lungs that no longer breathed. The temperature kept falling. At -70, water didn't freeze, it calcified into spires that could slice skin through polymer mesh. Trin led the navigation, his path etched through veins of ice that hummed beneath their feet. The cartel underestimated surface erosion. Their armored fauna doesn't adapt. They reinforced from above, assuming humans would blast their way in. They always do, Vesic said. Cartel doctrine followed pattern. Assume technological superiority, reinforce entry corridors, overwhelm through brute deployment. But Earth hadn't sent siege weapons, they'd sent an idea. And ideas moved differently. Ruvek paused mid-step and crouched. A faint scent, mineral-rich, like old stone after lightning, drifted from a fissure beside him. He waved Vesic over and pointed down. Below, layered within the glacier's stomach, was a half-buried outbuilding. The design was cartel standard, quadruped loading dock, aerial vents, reinforced steel lattice buried in engineered frost. But something was off. The doors were open, not broken, just left that way. Extraction in panic, Fenn asked, his voice distorted by the altitude filters. No, Vesic replied. They were told to hold, they ran anyway. Dren Solvik dropped first, descending the ravine wall like shadows stitched into stone. His movements avoided momentum. Every grip was calculated to absorb gravitational pull rather than fight it. He paused halfway and scanned the edge with thermal nodes. Body readings, he said. 7, clumped, no weapons drawn. Dead? Trin asked. No, sedated, light breathing, must have been gassed. Ruvek blinked once. My chem dispersal shouldn't have reached this depth. It didn't, Vesic said. These aren't ours. Then whose? Fenn asked. No one answered. They moved into the outbuilding, single file, tight, disciplined. Their boots echoed along the hall not because of sloppiness, but because the architecture had changed. The insulation had failed, the walls had compressed from frost crawl. Cartel reinforcements didn't consider pressure adaptation. They reached the internal hatch. Vorn stepped forward, placed his gloved palm on the door, and whispered a phrase in the cartel tongue, one tuned to mimic a forgotten clearance code. The door reacted, not from the code, but from the tone, a neurological backdoor left in place for auditory triggers. It clicked once, then opened. Inside, the bodies lay stacked, not violently, peacefully. Eyes open, pupils fixed. They were listening, Vesic said softly. To what? Mael asked. To something that made them stop moving. They stepped past without speaking, letting the silence speak louder. Up ahead, the main corridor widened. The ground shifted again. A low rumble, barely perceptible, flowed beneath them, Goran stretching in its sleep. They paused, not from fear, but from calibration. Subdermal plate shift. It's going to crack west, Trin said. Reposition to the ridge, Vesic ordered. If it opens, we vanish under it. They moved again, one motion, 6 vectors. Alien guards watched from drone feeds, bored, slow, watching thermal loops play on delay. One yawned, the feed stuttered. None of them noticed the shift in wind. or that one signal vanished entirely. Down below, Squad Veritas walked through a world where nothing belonged to them, but everything still obeyed. Trigger the collapse path. Let them think the mountain cracked. Tharan Vesik's voice dropped like a fault line splitting, barely above a whisper, yet each syllable carried layered command. The Veritas team stood still in the gloom beneath Outpost 9Sa's lower substructure, shrouded by natural frost pillars and mineral shears. Overhead the compound loomed, heat-shielded, sensor-wrapped, but ignorant of the quiet undoing blooming beneath its foundation. Male Trin was already kneeling beside a structural joint, one of the spine points in the cartel's support lattice, where cold stress and tectonic tension met in reluctant balance. He set down a node roughly the size of a palm, and ran 2 fingers along its edge. The device pulsed once, then vanished against the wall, cloaked not by tech, but by sound. The node absorbed ambient resonance, and redirected it through the internal braces of the facility, essentially weaponizing the building's own harmonic memory. "They'll register heat loss in 20 seconds, Trin muttered, adjusting a sine graph on his wristband. "Power bleed from sector junctions will mirror a failed thermal vent, non-critical, just enough to bait diagnostics." Vesik tapped his earpiece. "Let's find out if they follow their own alarms." Up above, inside the cartel's operations core, the mood had shifted. "What do you mean 3 thermal bands dipped?" barked Sub-Coordinator Harith, a violet-plated Mirren with triple-lidded eyes that twitched in rapid succession. A younger officer rotated the laser plasma interface, cycling overlays. "We're showing a drop in heat dispersion along the secondary lines, not mechanical, intermittent, like a shadow's moving through the pipes." "Nothing casts that kind of temperature profile," Harith snapped. "Unless it's not casting," the officer muttered. "What if it's redirecting? Internal sabotage, no breach, no movement flags. Systems show fully sealed corridors." Harith's mandibles clicked twice, irritated. "Send a scout team to check sectors 35 through 38, and loop the thermal feed on delay. Watch for divergence. If this is infiltration, I want their entry path reconstructed before command breathes on my neck." Below, Dren Solvik adjusted his hand anchors and scaled a collapsed stairwell that once led into a supply shaft. He paused at a fault line where coolant had leaked months ago, and flash froze across 3 floors, now brittle enough that a shift in vibration would rupture the entire shaft like a glass spine. He whispered, "Vorn, cue the drone mimic." Kethel, nestled in the ruins of a broken tram tunnel, activated a decoy emitter, tuned to cartel hover signatures, specifically, one mimicking an internal diagnostics bot. The emitter clicked once, then began moving slowly toward a thermal relay, its tread-like audio signature, identical to the facility's own service units. Upstairs, the first strike team, 5 hybrid mercenaries, bred with visual tactile reflex stacking, descended through a side corridor. Their feet clanged lightly on the gratings, weapons drawn but not raised. One sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. "Smells like gel coolant," he muttered. "But the system shouldn't be venting." "Don't trust smell," another replied. "Their war logs say humans use rot as camouflage. Sometimes they trigger leaks on purpose. Then why's the floor clean?" That's when the lights flickered. Only once, only for a second. But the cartel mercenaries froze. The lead gestured silently. "Split pairs, check for source." What none of them noticed was the shift in gravity beneath them, an imperceptible oscillation calibrated to exploit Goran's geological instability. Veritas hadn't planted a bomb, they'd redirected pressure. Male Trin tapped twice on his gauntlet. The node in the wall pinged back a reading, 98% stress alignment. "Now," he said. The corridor above dropped by less than an inch, but it was enough. A bearing plate shifted, the stabilizer flexed, and the wall vented a hiss of cryo-vapor, designed to mimic a pipe rupture. Instinct kicked in. The alien unit retreated into a maintenance chamber. The door sealed, and stayed sealed. "Wait," one of them said. "Why didn't it open on our exit code?" Another turned to the wall panel. Static. Another screen flickered on. Only it wasn't a warning, it was them. A frame-by-frame playback of the mercenaries' approach, from multiple angles, as if someone had been filming them long before they entered. The lead stepped back, weapon rising. "Where's the camera?" But the playback continued, and then abruptly, it reversed. like someone rewinding a mistake. Back outside, Vesik and Solvik watched the entry hatch lock from the exterior. A faint click echoed inside their helmets. Fenn's voice came over comms. Seal confirmed. Thermal decay initiated. The chamber holding the 5 mercenaries began to cool, not rapidly, gradually, controlled. Goran's outside air was flooding in through redirected maintenance pipes. Veritas had rewired 3 days before the strike. None of the mercenaries inside would die. Not yet, but the cold would slow their reaction time, blur their vision, cloud decision-making, and then sound. Kethel's audio implant began broadcasting a fragment of language, a looped sentence in the dialect of a long-dead Volcari warlord, one used in ancient cartel conditioning programs. The frequency was tuned to trigger dormant fear markers buried in merc units trained under those protocols. Inside the chamber, one of the mercs began to shake. "There's nothing here," he whispered. "No," the lead muttered, trying to steady his breath. "There's everything here, we're just not seeing it." Seconds later, the feed cut. In the ops center, Sub-Coordinator Harith stared at the frozen frame. Thermal readings gone, audio wiped. The team had vanished. Not killed, not destroyed, absorbed. "Call Central," he growled. "Tell them we may have a contact breach." The younger officer hesitated. "There's no alarm, no evidence of hostile penetration." "Exactly," Harith whispered. "That's the evidence." "Don't hit it," Vesik murmured. Eyes locked on the feed. "We don't crush hammers. We trip them mid-swing." A synthetic silhouette emerged from the far corridor, its frame tall enough to brush the upper bulkheads. Light fractured across its angular surface. No armor seams, no visible power source, just motionless mass, draped in engineered symmetry. It paused at a junction where 6 heat paths converged. Model designation, Z-07. Cartel codename Carnix. Not bred, not born, forged. Ruvek Strawn checked his compound dispersers for the 3rd time. "Lungless. Doesn't breathe. Can't be poisoned. Doesn't need to be," Trin replied, crouched beside a vertical stabilizer duct. "We're not trying to stop its systems. We're removing the ground it's standing on." The team moved in a half-circle arc, silent, surrounding the kill box. No weapons drawn, no high-velocity counters. Each held a seismic rod, titanium-carved needles pre-tuned to Goran's pressure points. The foundation of the trap had begun weeks ago, mapped from orbital scans, reinforced with resonance beacons camouflaged beneath frost layers. It wasn't an explosive zone. It was a yield ring, a lattice of interconnected ground veins weakened at exact ratios. When triggered, the chamber wouldn't blow, it would sink. "The beast doesn't pivot," Vesik continued. "It's built to run through, not around. Make it do both." Upstairs inside Cartel Command, the deployment order had already been given. "You're activating Carnix now?" asked the logistics officer, his fingers shaking over the heads-up interface. "Protocol, Z-OR requires." "Override it," snapped Commander Yikros. "Every sector is losing signal. Normal soldiers aren't solving this. Send in something that doesn't ask questions." The Apex unit dropped from the vault shaft in perfect stillness. Its feet struck the ground like a gavel hitting stone. A tremor rolled across the reinforced floor tiles. Vorn Kethel listened to the shift of air as the synthetic passed, its movement devoid of noise, not quiet, absent. "The way a glacier moved before it cracked the valley beneath it," he whispered. "Seismic ripples rising. It's pressing weight into Junction 3. Auric Fenn adjusted the final trigger node embedded in the ceiling vent, and checked his own location. "If we miss the first collapse, we don't get a second." "We won't miss," Vesik replied. The synthetic turned its head. No neck, no eyes, just directional awareness based on magnetic drag and subatomic decay. It paused again, this time mid-step. It detected something, but not what it expected. A false heat signal flared behind a pipe wall. Synthetic logic dictated immediate pursuit. Carnix shifted course, turning into the corridor, baited by Solvik 30 seconds prior. Dren's voice ticked in. "Path engagement in 4 seconds. Trap 1 will activate on impact." The synthetic moved forward. The floor beneath it groaned, barely, then gave way, not violently, not suddenly, but like a lie unraveling under its own weight. A hollow thud echoed, dull and wet, as the Carnix dropped into a chamber 10 meters below, now exposed. Its legs crunched into a pool of pressure-adaptive fluid. a synthetic non-Newtonian gel formulated on Earth, originally designed for high-pressure oil rig stabilization during seismic offshore events. Under normal weight, it flowed. Under force, it solidified. The apex unit shifted. The fluid hardened. Its legs locked mid-motion, frozen by the very pressure it created. Above, Fenn dropped the final rod. A calibrated micro-vibration pulsed into the chamber, triggering the gel's final phase, adhesion. Every contact surface bonded like coral under lightning, molecular anchors forming chains along the synthetic's internal temperature output. Carnix tilted forward, tried to adjust. Its inertia worked against it. For the first time, the unit paused, not out of programming hesitation, but lack of options. It attempted an override. That's when Trin activated the final part of the trap, a refraction loop planted 3 days earlier, inside the facility's core power relay. It sent Carnix's own diagnostic signals back at it, mirrored, bent, out of sync. The machine started reading phantom threats, heat shadows, motion trails, seismic flares that weren't there. Carnix struck the wall once, wildly, then again. Each time, it triggered more resistance. Vesic stood at the edge of the opening, staring down. "You're not the first apex we've put in a hole," he said quietly, "but you might be the dumbest." Inside its cognitive stream, Carnix's threat map rotated. Targets danced. None real. It swung again. The motion activated the gel's compression phase. More pressure, more binding. It screamed, not audibly. Its systems pinged in ultra-high frequency, sending echo calls through the metal. None of them reached command. The signal drowned in its own noise. Vorn stepped forward, beside Vesic. "You think it knows?" "Knows what?" Solvik asked, approaching from the flank. "That it was never meant to win. It was built for intimidation, for spectacle." Ruvek checked his vitals. "I wonder if the cartel ever tested it somewhere that fights back." They didn't need to stay long. Carnix wasn't going anywhere. Its energy core would drain within hours. The fluid wouldn't allow internal cooling. Eventually, it would overheat, not from flame, but from effort. As they turned away, Fenn muttered, "You think they'll send another?" "No," Vesic said. "They'll bury this thing in silence, and pretend it never moved." Above, Cartel Command attempted to reboot Carnix's interface. No response. Yikros stared at the feed, the screen now frozen. The last frame showed Carnix standing in knee-high black gel, limbs torqued against invisible shackles. He slammed his hand against the console. "What are these creatures?" A technician swallowed hard. "Earthborn. Metaphors. Scan the cortex coil. I want everything behind their eyes, timestamps, suppressor logs, control loops. If it blinks, we broadcast it." Commander Theron Vesic didn't pace. He stood rooted, elbows resting on a rusted console in Substation 3A. What used to be a cartel data relay room, now turned forensic node by Squad Veritas. The walls peeled from heat layering, frost seeping through cracks overhead. Ice dripped like veins from exposed conduit, falling in intervals that felt ritualistic. Male Trin crouched beside the captured hybrid officer, strapped to a cold slab, neural cap already threaded into the base of its neck. Its eyes were open, unfocused, not sedated. Disarmed by something more intimate than restraint. "They coded in cyclic dampeners," Trin muttered. Every time he recalled a cartel directive, a loop flushed the cortical memory trace. But the scrub's shallow. Someone rushed the embed. They didn't expect a backdoor recovery. "How deep can you go?" Vesic asked without moving. "Deep enough to make a treaty violation look deliberate." Above them, Ruvek Strawn moved through stacks of captured inhibitors, lining them on a graded table. Each device, no larger than a thumb, still blinked weakly. He ran a multi-spectrum probe over the array. 32 units total, 12 active. The rest either failed or were rejected by host biology. "All installed post-deployment." "Post," Vorn Kethel asked from the far wall, adjusting his sonic broadcaster. Ruvek nodded. "Standard control implants are pre-trained, issued during conditioning. These were inserted after arrival on Goran, likely to override hesitation. Cartel didn't trust their own mercs. Meaning," Vesic said, "they expected this to escalate." The air turned heavier. Outside, the wind thinned into whistles again, slipping through the compound's broken seal plates. Dren Solvik leaned near the door, eyes on perimeter readouts. His silence wasn't avoidance. It was orchestration. Every 10 seconds, he mapped vibration flows along the corridor, calculating timing between distant patrol steps and pressure shifts. Mail blinked his headset display into active mode. Memory segments are archived in compressed linguistic clusters. They didn't bother translating. Raw thought code, still decrypting the syntax. We don't need their language, Vesic replied. We need intent. From the corner, Fenn slammed a power cell into the comm node. The screen flickered, loading the cartel's internal network buffer. Heads-up feeds traced facility traffic patterns, noting odd gaps where guards should have been. Redundant patrols were scheduled but never walked. Too many skipped time points. Too many units tagged as stationaries, with no further annotation. Dead zones, Fenn growled. Not security blind spots. Neural hold states. Ruvek held up a dissected implant. Command loop intercepts. This one reroutes fear response directly into muscular dampening. Triggers compliance through paralysis. You sure it's cartel tech? Vorn asked. Trin answered for him. No one else encodes neural dominance through pheromone-associative pathways. This design links trauma to command tone. It doesn't suppress resistance. It grows obedience out of it. Vesic finally stepped back from the console. Build the package. Show the chain. Deployment to override to inhibition. What's your transmission vector? Trin asked. Vesic tilted his chin toward the relay beneath them. Planetary magnetic layer. We lace the harmonic broadcast under seismic drift. The data moves like tectonic echo bounces between field lines. It'll surface at every long-range comm tap they buried. You're going to ride a signal through the crust? Fenn asked. We already are, Vesic said. They just don't know what's coming. Above, in the cartel's primary command spire, alarms remained oddly quiet. Commander Yikros leaned over his console, eyes scanning corrupted playback files. The surveillance network had begun collapsing 30 minutes ago. Not through attack, but feedback, a mirror effect. Each attempt to trace an intruder sent data back, altered. His tech officer panicked. Sir, we're bleeding packet trails into null zones. Internal systems are cross-referencing fake inputs against real ones. The logs don't align. It's like someone is running our own version of events. Before we do, Yikros clenched his jaw. Cut up links. Now, isolate the grid. We already did. 3 times. They're not coming from outside. Below, Trin finalized the compression burst. Signal ready. Harmonic band loaded. Kethel tapped the transmitter node with 2 fingers. Voice codec layered over diagnostic pitch. They'll read it as a repair loop, until it triggers emotion pathways. Then it flips into data. Truth through feeling, Ruvek said. That's a very human tactic. Vesic checked his own display. The encryption chain blinked green. Play it loud. Trin engaged the pulse. No lights flared, no sound escaped, but beneath their boots the floor vibrated, soft at first, then rhythmic, as if the earth had chosen to whisper rather than shake. The frequency bent around rock and metal, sliding under steel, passing through foundation beams like memory through blood. Within minutes, terminals across the facility blinked without prompt. Some rebooted, others jammed open. Heads-up displays flickered. Static crawled across laser interfaces, and then recognition. A Confederation seal appeared, not inserted, exposed. The broadcast included timestamps, design specs, sequence recordings, and most damning, a complete breakdown of cognitive manipulation protocols inside cartel-installed neural implants. The signatures matched 23 treaty-prohibited elements, 5 of which had no known precedent for counterintelligence approval. Fenn exhaled slowly. We just handed the Confederation a loaded verdict. Ruvek leaned against the wall, rubbing dried frost from his gloves. They won't be able to deny it. Even if they want to, doesn't mean they'll act. Solvek said from the entrance. Doesn't mean they'll protect us. No, Vesic replied. But it means we no longer need their permission to win. In the spire, Yikros stared as every terminal in command center lit with the same headline. Cartel treaty breach confirmed. Evidence tagged for judicial oversight. His mouth went dry. Every channel was now feeding the same stream, and none of it came from inside. He turned slowly, and in the reflection of the display, he saw one word blinking red in the corner. Veritas. The signal didn't demand response. It simply revealed truth, and left the galaxy to decide what it would do with it. Seal the vault. Don't wait for authorization. The order cracked across the Silic command deck as Commander Rethfor's mandibles fluttered in disarray. The feed from Substation 3A had just cut mid-frame as Veritas's seismic-coded broadcast collapsed their surveillance buffer. All remaining internal paths flickered in irregular pulses on the laser plasma map like a nervous system glitching mid-reflex. No location was safe. Worse, none of them could agree on what was real. Outside that command chamber, mercenary factions spiraled. The thoracic, six-limbed void climbers from the Olix belt were the first to vanish. Not in combat by choice. Their entire patrol battalion filed into a lower cargo shaft, ejected escape pods, and launched without permission. No distress calls, no goodbye. Inside the western quarter, the Venari heavy infantry debated their own exit strategy. Towering bipeds bred for siege warfare, they'd been promised full immunity from radiation and deep gravity fatigue. None of that mattered now. The moment one squadron encountered a playback of themselves walking in a loop, recorded by an enemy camera that hadn't existed 10 minutes earlier, they folded. One slammed a gloved fist into a bulkhead and whispered, "They saw us before we moved." The Yarsik Union tacticians, three-eyed and organ-grown for battlefield foresight, collapsed under a different fear, pattern blindness. Their probability engines failed to predict Veritas movements, and that statistical collapse triggered a panic spiral in command hierarchy. They didn't fight, they froze. In Corridor Sector 12B, a cluster of genetically engineered Sarkhan null troopers watched as all their optical data feeds stuttered. 3 attempted to re-engage fallback protocols. The 4th activated a controlled burn, torching the neural relay embedded in his squad's nav chips. His logic was simple: if they can read us, they can rewrite us. Back in the central war chamber, Commander Rethfor issued a last call broadcast. His voice jittered, unsure whether he was speaking to allies or ghosts. Reroute all comm traffic to static buffers. Flood all open doors. Activate Protocol Grey Ash. Protocol Grey Ash was not a defense measure, it was exit masking. Throughout the lower rings of the outpost, bulkhead doors slammed shut. Ventilation systems reversed flow. Barricades deployed in key corridors, not to trap enemies, but to erase footprints. Explosive charges in selected crawl spaces armed on a 60-second timer. The idea wasn't to win, it was to leave nothing behind. Veritas didn't stop them. They didn't need to, they already controlled the timing. Solvik monitored the chaos from a server junction deep in the maintenance shell. His display showed withdrawal pings spiking. They're activating escape pathways on their own. We didn't trigger anything. They're ghosting themselves. Fen answered from a floor above, "Let them clean up. Saves us the trouble." Some are heading toward docking bays, Ruvek added, watching thermal drift maps. Others are just punching holes in their own tunnels to disappear into the frost. Male Trin stepped forward from the shadows, data slate in hand. Subdeck 3 just imploded. Controlled breach. No kinetic signature. They're purging evidence. Vesik entered from the eastern catwalk, helmet under one arm. His expression unreadable, but his voice steady. "They want to pretend we were never here." Vorn tapped into a crumbling terminal, listening to intercepted chatter. The ones still transmitting, "They're not asking for help. They're whispering, 'Don't come here.'" Outside, several cartel frigates initiated non-recovery ascent. Engines cold, minimal burn, no signal. The same ships that had delivered soldiers to Goran 6 were now ejecting from orbit without confirming ground support. Inside the outpost's atrium, a detachment of mercenaries debated their exit. One, taller than the rest, raised a plasma torch and cut through a sealed dock door. When the lock hissed and no alarms triggered, he stopped, turned slowly. A human figure stood on the far side of the corridor, armor dark, posture still, no weapon, no movement, just presence. The merc leader dropped the torch and ran. Veritas didn't follow. Instead, Kethel activated the sonic sublayer hidden in the walls. Low tones threaded through cartel echo channels. The sound wasn't loud, it wasn't meant to deafen, it was built to haunt. The frequency mimicked a predator's steps across open terrain, drawn from Terran wildlife archives, broadcast only in pressure intervals that bypassed auditory comprehension and hit the gut directly. The retreat became a stampede. In the spire, Yikros watched feeds collapse one by one. None showed combat, just abandonment. "We've lost the outpost," one advisor said. "No," Yikros muttered. "We lost it before they landed. We just didn't know yet." In the loading deck, an entire mercenary squad, trained to resist nerve gas and endure orbital compression, stood motionless, watching a security display that played a single loop. The footage showed them, 1 hour prior, pacing the hallway. Only in the playback, there were 7 soldiers. They were only 6. None could remember who the 7th was. 1 dropped his weapon. 2 ran. The others followed. In the black ridge above Substation 7, Veritas watched the last external pod burn through the ice field and vanish into orbit. They didn't cheer. They didn't record it. They marked it. Any remaining units? Vesic asked. Nothing mobile, Trin answered. We've got 2 internal patrols curled up in blast-proof maintenance rooms. No heat readings. They're just sitting. They'll report. They'll stutter. Kethel's voice came through calmly. We didn't destroy their chain of command. We deleted trust. Ruvek packed the last of the data drives. The moment they start doubting their own eyes, their hands stop moving. Solvik glanced back down the corridor. The lights were flickering again, but this time, on their own. No loop, just failure. Ready for extraction, he said. Above them, docking systems began rebooting under Veritas control. There were no guards left to stop them. Final node is stable. Drop time in 60 seconds. The voice came from male Trin, but it was addressed to no one in particular. Squad Veritas stood at the southern pole of Goran 6, where the ice didn't melt. It fractured. The sky here wore no stars, only the bruised shimmer of ionized light from distant gas streams and magnetic bursts writhing along the planet's crust. Dren Solvik knelt by the beacon, setting the last anchor spike with 2 gloved fingers. The unit looked unremarkable. No signal dish, no comms armature, just a hexagonal prism, dull black, its surface unmarked, function embedded, message encoded. Thurin Vesic observed from the ridge above, arms folded, visor dimmed. His breath didn't fog, his suit compensated, but the cold still existed, pressing in through the atmosphere, reminding every human cell that survival here was earned, not gifted. This wasn't a victory to declare, it was a statement. Trin rose without a word and stepped back. The wind carved through the terrain, low and dry, like breath being drawn through broken teeth. Every step away from the beacon was deliberate. Below the ridge, a hull began to emerge. Veritas's extraction craft, long dormant, buried beneath glacier layers 3 weeks before the mission began. Mail tapped a coded frequency into his bracer, and the ice split along pre-cut seams. The ship rose slow, frost falling off its back in slabs. Inside, Vorn Kethel watched silent logs cycle across the heads-up interface, enemy broadcasts repeating their own confusion, looped over false location markers seeded by Veritas on day 2. Not a single alien command node had traced the humans. Not once. Ruvik Strawn entered last, dusting fragments of thermal insulation from his sleeves. He glanced back at the beacon once before boarding. The door sealed. Trin stayed outside a moment longer. He didn't speak, just checked the device's frequency one final time. Then he touched the activation switch. Flat, invisible, silent. The beacon lit, not in visible spectrum, but in presence. It began pulsing on Goran's magnetic field, using mineral harmonics, native tectonic oscillations, and legacy comm layer bleed-through. Nothing artificial, no signal trace. It wouldn't show up on scans, but every cartel outpost would feel the ripple, and every Confederation relay would log a new anomaly, a repeating message broadcast as a planetary signature. Exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. The beacon never repeated itself verbally. It didn't need to. 6 days later, the Confederation observer vessel, Vornalis, entered Goran's orbit. No cartel ships challenged their path. The entire airspace had gone quiet, like a theater cleared mid-act, the actors gone, the curtain still swinging. Scout Lead Taharis Gen, a diplomatic attaché from Velsec Prime, surveyed the planet's telemetry from orbit. The first thing he noticed, no distress calls, no emergency beacons, not even environmental anomalies. Passive sweep shows null activity, the tech officer murmured. Atmospheric radiation at baseline, no detected armaments, no ship debris, nothing. That's impossible, Taharis replied, voice low. They were fighting here a week ago. The cartel confirmed hostile infiltration. They requested reinforcements. No visual confirmation, the officer said. The facility still stands, structurally compromised, but intact. They dropped a probe. It glided through the ion curtain, hit the lower thermals, and disappeared into the glacial layer. A moment later, the feed returned, flickering, but stable. The camera swept across the southern plain, and stopped. A shape stood alone in the ice, black, angular, motionless. Zoom, Taharis ordered. The display sharpened. The object wasn't transmitting, yet the probe's telemetry spiked. Magnetic interference, pulse signatures, an internal echo as if the planet itself was repeating the message. Translate pulse structure, Taharis said quietly. The message appeared on the heads-up panel. Exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. He leaned forward. Repeat scan. Is there any sign of a transmitter? No hardware, the tech answered, but the signal persists. It's not coming from the device. It's coming through the planet. The deck went quiet. One of the junior diplomats, still new to off-world postings, finally spoke. So, what does it mean? Taharis didn't answer right away. He tapped the console, replayed the message. Each time it appeared, it was unchanged, not aggressive, not rhetorical, just final. We've seen this format before, he said finally. One other time. A quiet message left after an Earth naval operation in the Kalex system. No fatalities, no surrender demands, just a signature. He stood slowly, eyes still locked on the beacon. This isn't a warning, he said. It's a method. They remained in orbit another hour, running sweeps. They never found a human ship, not even exhaust traces, just that one silent monument, standing like a tombstone to an event that left no bodies, only decisions. On the way out of orbit, Taharis logged one line in the observer report. Encounter concluded. No engagement. Recommend political review of Terran operational doctrine. Further contact not advised without precaution. No. I don't care how many credits they offer. Remove it. The voice, clipped and dry, echoed inside the outer ring of the Talakar Exchange, one of the largest mercenary contract hubs along the Mid-Orion corridor. Dozens of heads turned as Commander Exus Varun of the Cathari Vanguard closed the request window on his heads-up display. His second-in-command blinked in confusion. It was a bounty triple the usual, Class Black engagement, cartel-funded. Varun didn't respond. He simply rotated his wrist once, unlocking his neural ledger, and entered a code only a few dozen mercenaries across the galaxy knew. A private tag lit his visor. Species ban issued, Earthborn. In another quadrant, on the spinning citadel of Euros Prime, the Dralin Syndicate reviewed their active queue of recovery contracts. Out of the 112 active engagements, 6 had a common target, United Earth Special Operations. The room remained silent as the analyst zoomed in on the Goran 6 post-incident summary. Footage was non-existent, logs incomplete, reports vague, but the fear that was undeniable. Archive those 6, muttered Director Kelthar. Not rejected, erased. A murmur passed across the hall. You're blacklisting Terrans? One lieutenant asked. No, Kelthar said, voice low. I'm blacklisting extinction events. You don't aim at a thunderstorm and hope it misses. Back on Earth, Tharan Vesic stepped from the debriefing chamber, beneath sub-level 9 of United Command's orbital complex. He moved without flourish, coat drawn across his forearm, boots leaving tracks on the glassine floor. A senior officer passed him in the corridor, and didn't speak. No nod, no gesture, just awareness. In Vesic's palm rested a chip. No emblem, no encryption, just a word engraved into its alloy, Veritas. Ruvek Strawn was already waiting at the exit. He handed Vesic a thermal flask, not asking where he'd been or how many hours had passed. Officially, he said with a small glance at the sealed hallway behind them, your file lists Goran as a system recon op, routine, nothing elevated. And unofficially, Vesic asked without looking. Ruvek shrugged. Unofficially, half the Confederation stopped filing patrol rotations in that sector. One Union admiral called it a tactical anomaly, best left unmapped. Vesic exhaled through his nose. They always need a name for fear. Across 12 border sectors, new warning symbols lit up contract boards. Earth's emblem, never flashy, just a circle bisected by one vertical line, now carried an addendum. Non-engagement recommended. No contact without oversight. Earthborn status, closed target. And in a back room of the Trelax Guild archive, where old wars were catalogued and sold as history for hire, a scribe logged the Goran incident under a new tag, Human Tactical Signature, Class 0. The only other file in that tier referenced a skirmish off the Collex Drift, where 3 human freighters eliminated a pirate fleet using gravitational shadow casting and long-wave echo bombs embedded inside their own life support systems. Back on Earth, inside a small black terminal with no operator assigned, a message quietly logged itself. Operation Void Lance, completed. All assets exfiltrated. 0 casualties. Strategic metric, absolute denial. Beacon received by Confederation entities. Myth layer seeded. Risked classification, rewritten. No celebration followed. No medal, no broadcast, just confirmation, and beyond that, silence. Meanwhile, across mercenary syndicates, whispers became policy. A Vorshek captain posted a contract refusal to the Outer Rim's open bid forum. We do not engage Earthborn. If you value your crew, neither should you. A Denvari strategist, bred to model collapse scenarios, withdrew from 3 high-risk missions after simulating human entry points. They don't fight where we expect. They don't move where we see. We die before we even know they're watching. At the edge of Confederation jurisdiction, an elite Brel task force tore down recruitment ads that mentioned Earth skirmishes. Their commander said only one thing during the briefing: we track patterns. Earth isn't one. Inside the command centers of 4 major powers, the same reports circulated: Terran squads deployed with no enhancement. No cybernetic support, no psychic field teams, just data, just discipline, just memory. And yet they erased an entire installation, without firing a single public shot. In one last image archived across black market relays, a still frame showed the beacon standing alone in the frost. The words glowed faintly in harmonic reflection, pulled up from a seismic pulse echoing across bedrock. No signal, just the phrase, exercise concluded. Threat neutralized. No response followed. None dared. Inside Earth Command's deepest archive, a room beneath orbital range, beneath sonar sweep, beneath bureaucracy, Theron Vesic stepped onto a lone platform. The lights dimmed automatically, the console rising without sound. A voice activated, neutral and familiar. Mission logged. Tactical review. Total outcome control. He placed the Veritas chip into its slot. The screen displayed 6 words: do you wish to continue operation? He stared at them for a moment, not hesitating. Remembering cold halls, broken surveillance, beast soldiers trapped not with weapons, but knowledge. Remembering every alien commander who thought strength meant claws, or armor, or speed. He pressed the green key, the terminal faded to black, the chip slid back into his hand, and beneath Earth's surface, far from stars and stories, the truth slept. It did not roar, it did not demand, it waited, because somewhere out in the quiet dark, another cartel would forget, and someone else would need to remember. Earth doesn't hunt you, it waits for you to walk in alone, then it erases you, quietly, completely, without even needing to raise its voice.